My husband is a pediatric heart surgeon. That night, he stood in the hallway of his own hospital and told the bed coordinator that our 7-year-old daughter was ready to be moved down a level. He said it while she was on pressors. He said it 11 minutes after her intensivist wrote in the chart that she wasn't ready to leave the PICU at all. I didn't say it to me. I found out from the charge nurse, 31 years on that unit, who told me by the ice machine because she thought somebody should. Then she said the part that ended my marriage. He told them the other boy needed it more. Here is what nobody explains to you about sepsis. Her fingertips were cold and her forehead was burning, and I kept touching one, then the other, as if checking enough times would make the two numbers agree. She shook, not from cold, from somewhere underneath, teeth knocking, her whole body going off in waves while her eyes stayed shut. The nurses called it rigors. I called it the longest 30 minutes of my life. Lactate. I learned that word at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday. Looked it up at 4:02 and wished I hadn't. By evening, she had 3 pumps running, antibiotics, fluids, and the small one, keeping her blood pressure from sliding somewhere it could not come back from. That one clicked. Every few seconds, a soft plastic click. I cannot hear that sound now without my hands going cold. Her name is Wren, 7 years and 4 months, and she'd said her stomach hurt for 2 days before any of us understood what we were looking at. She surfaced around 6. "Phil," she said. Then, "How many are we at?" She counts bridges. Pittsburgh has 446, and she has been trying to see everyone since she was 5. We were at 91. 91, I said. "Okay," and she went back under. I found him under the warming blanket, flattened and damp, a stuffed groundhog with one ear chewed soft. We bought Phil in Punxsutawney in February on a trip. Elliot planned himself. The crowd was 8 deep, and Wren couldn't see. So he put her on his shoulders and kept her there 40 minutes in 20-degree cold, both hands locked around her ankles. When the groundhog came out, she screamed so loud, the man beside us laughed for a full minute. I need you to know that man existed. This is not a story about a monster. It is a story about a man who once stood in the freezing dark holding his daughter's ankles, and who 12 weeks later did what he did. I went for ice chips a little after 7. Denise Halloran was at the machine. Charge nurse. 31 years on that unit. The kind of woman who has watched 3 generations of doctors arrive certain of themselves and leave humbled. She wasn't gossiping. "Mrs. Vance?" She filled my cup before I asked. "I filed an escalation 20 minutes ago. My supervisor has it. Risk management will have it in the morning." "About what?" "A bed review request on your daughter." She handed me the cup. "You'll hear it from somebody eventually. I decided it shouldn't be a stranger." I asked her who opened it. She looked at me a second longer than she needed to, then told me what he'd said to the coordinator. Not shouting, not cruel, the reasonable voice of a man solving a problem. I went to the nurse's station and asked for Simone Okafor. Dr. Okafor is Wren's intensivist, 45, and she does not use 2 words where one will do. "My note stands," she said, before I finished the question. "She is vasopressor dependent, not a step-down candidate." That's what I wrote at 3:42 and what I'd write again now. Has anything changed since 3:42? Her fever came back at noon. Her pressure needed more support at 4. A pause. "Nothing has changed in a direction anyone would want." Then she said, "Margot, who told you about a step-down?" I didn't answer her. I went looking for my husband. I found him past the double doors at the end of the corridor, beside a transport gurney. There was a woman with him. her back to me, one hand flat on the rail. Elliot was leaning in, the way he leans when he is being reassuring. I did not see her face. I said his name. He turned, crossed the hallway, and put 2 fingers on my elbow, the way you steady someone about to embarrass herself. Margot, he said, don't make this a thing. He walked me into the consultation room and shut the door. Before you say anything, let me give you the clinical picture. Not, I'm sorry, not let me explain. The clinical picture. There is a 9-year-old on that gurney with acute myocarditis. He went into ventricular tachycardia twice during transport. Twice. He may need ECMO by morning. And this is the only unit inside 40 minutes that can cannulate a child. 11 years, married to a surgeon. I know the sound of a man explaining something, and the sound of a man presenting something rehearsed. There was no hesitation in any of it. That frightened me more than shouting would have. Did Simone Okafor approve a step down for Wren? I spoke with bed coordination about capacity. That isn't the question. We don't have time for a deposition. We have time for one answer. Did her intensivist approve moving her? 1 second. 1 second too long. No, there it was. Small, clean. Impossible to take back. Then I asked the question I would not understand the weight of for months. Northbridge has a PICU. Why isn't Milo going there? His face moved. He's too unstable to transport. And Wren isn't. Wren is stable enough. So you picked the child who could absorb the risk. That is not what I said. It is exactly what you said. And she's the one you handed it to. He opened his mouth. The door opened instead. She was there before either of us moved. Pale, blonde, coming loose from a clip. A borrowed cardigan over her shoulders. They're saying the bed still isn't ready. Her hand went to his sleeve. You said you'd handle it. Elliot did not move his arm. He did not say, I don't know what you mean. He did not say, ma'am. He stood with a stranger's hand on his sleeve and said nothing. And that is how I learned she was not a stranger. Nadia, he said, quietly. The way you say a name you have said many times. Nadia Kroll. I had heard that name twice in 11 years, both times in past tense. I took off my wedding ring. I want to be accurate, because people always assume there was a scene. I did not throw it. I did not slap anyone. I slid it off, put it in the pocket of my purse where I keep my passport, and took out my phone. Yolanda Pierce runs my family's foundation. She picked up on the second ring. The Ridgemont grant. Freeze it. Nothing signed, nothing sent. $20 million for their pediatric critical care expansion. Announced at a gala in October under a banner with our photograph on it. Not 1 cent had moved. I had negotiated every line over 11 months, and the last signature was mine. He went very still. You're using $20 million as a weapon. I'm using a pause button. I put the phone away. You're the one who hears a weapon. Dr. Okafor made the call herself. Northbridge accepted in 19 minutes. A coordinator laid the consent in front of me. Mobile ICU, critical care nurse, respiratory therapist, telemedicine attending. A PICU to PICU transfer carries its own risk, Okafor said. I want that on the record, but if the alternative is a general floor, which I do not recommend, I will facilitate it. I signed. Elliot refused to sign as second parent. It changed nothing. Either of us could consent. She documented that too. They wheeled her out at 9:40. At the double doors, the gurneys came parallel for 6 seconds. My daughter going out. Nadia's son waiting to come in. Milo was gray under the lights, and he was 9, and none of it was his fault. I thought about that even then. He lifted 2 fingers off the blanket. A peace sign. Wren, half under, lifted 2 back. Neither of them understood the war we built around them. There was more grace in 6 seconds of that hallway than in any adult standing in it. I include myself. Elliot caught the ambulance door. Let me ride with her. No. Then I'll meet you there. And then, because he could not help himself, Milo needs me more right now. He heard it half a second after he said it. I watched him hear it. He did not take it back. I climbed in. The doors closed on him, standing on the sidewalk between us. She surfaced on the parkway for 4 seconds. Is Dad coming? No, baby. Is he busy? Yes. She nodded and went back under. Children accept things very fast. That is the part nobody warns you about. 11 minutes. That is how long it took from the bay doors at Northbridge to Wren in a bed. Lines rehung, her monitor talking to their monitor. 11 minutes, because they had held the room since the phone call, and a respiratory therapist was already standing in it when we came down the corridor. 6 years on a hospital gala committee. And I had never once thought about the difference between a place that holds a room and a place that reviews a bed. Dr. Erin Feld came in at 10:30 with her chart. 50s, reading glasses pushed into his hair, coat sleeves a half-inch too short. She traveled well, he said. Her pressure dipped once around Bloomfield and responded to a bump in the drip. We're keeping her on full monitoring tonight. Nobody in that room said the word Ashcombe. Nobody offered me a chair from an office. A nurse asked if I'd eaten. And when I said no, she brought a turkey sandwich in plastic from the staff refrigerator and set it on the windowsill without comment. I did not expect that to matter as much as it did. I asked him one question. Would you have stepped her down tonight? He looked at the numbers a second longer than he needed to. Not based on what I'm looking at. I didn't ask him anything else. I had learned something in the previous 4 hours that I have kept since. When the facts are strong enough, you don't have to push them. The pump clicked. Every few seconds, antibiotics, fluids, and the small one that was still doing the work her body would not do. The foundation board convened at 11:20 by video. My mother appeared from her study, still in the blouse she'd worn to a museum dinner. Richard and Tim, who ran a hospital network for 19 years before retiring onto our board. Loretta Sung, our independent governance chair, who has never in 8 years let me finish a sentence I hadn't thought all the way through. I talked for 5 minutes. I did not say Nadia's name. I described Wren's status, Okafor's documented recommendation. The bed review request opened after it. And the fact that a senior clinical executive with no role on her care team had involved himself in a resource decision about his own child. Then I said the sentence I had been assembling in the ambulance. I'm recusing. My husband is the subject. My daughter is the patient. I don't get a vote on this. Loretta said, noted for the minutes. Then I turned off my camera and sat in the dark of a family lounge on the 4th floor of a hospital I had never set foot in before that night, with no control over the outcome of anything. That is the part people leave out. Everyone assumes the money made me powerful. The money made me eligible to hand the decision to 3 people I could not lobby. Yolanda called at 11:48. 3-0. Suspension of negotiations pending an independent review. A pause. Margot, they didn't agree with you because you're an Ashcombe. They agreed because you were right. Then my mother called separately, which she almost never does. How is she? Stable. Good. And then, without any change in her voice, would you have recused if the vote had been close? I opened my mouth and nothing came out. That pause is the honest answer, she said. Sit with it. She hung up. I have sat with it for 2 years. There was another mother in the family lounge. Her son was 4. She was on day 2, a hospital blanket over her knees and a paperback she wasn't reading. "What day are you on?" 3. 3's the worst one. She was right. We didn't exchange names. We didn't exchange anything else. Around 2 in the morning, she got up, set a vending machine coffee on the arm of my chair on her way past, and went back into her son. I have thought about that woman more times than I have thought about my husband. At 6:10, I looked at my phone for the first time since midnight. 27 missed calls. Elliot, his mother, Ridgemont's chief of staff, Elliot again. I answered none of them. I sent one message. "Wren is stable. Feld says the next 24 hours matter. You can come at 5. Do not discuss our marriage in front of her." His reply came back in under a minute. "Our marriage is not over." I read it twice, turned off read receipts, and went to find more ice. He came at 5 and he was good with her. That is the part I have never been able to make fit. He sat on the edge of the bed for 40 minutes and let her explain the plot of a cartoon he had no interest in. And when she fell asleep mid-sentence, he stayed 10 more minutes just watching her breathe. Whatever else he was, in that room he was her father. He left at 6. I opened the family iPad at 8. We bought it for her. Reading games, movies on planes, a shared calendar. His messages used to sync to it. He turned that off a few months ago and I never asked why. Because you don't. Because asking would mean you had noticed. Not everything disappeared when he turned it off. Nadia. "Milo is settled. Thank you. I know what this cost you." Then, under it, Nadia. I shouldn't have said what I did in front of her. I unlocked it. The history went back further than it should have. I scrolled to the previous afternoon and read forward. Nadia. "They're saying there's nothing open anywhere." Elliot. "I'm looking at Wren's status now." Nadia. "You said you'd find a way if he got worse." Elliot. "Simone is being cautious. I can handle Wren's bed." Nadia. "You promised." I stopped on that word. Promised, past tense. It had already happened. Before he spoke to me, before he spoke to Okafor, possibly before Milo's ambulance cleared the north side. Every reasonable sentence he'd said to me in that consultation room had been built afterward, backward. To hold up something already decided, I kept scrolling. Coffee, cardiology appointments. A joke I didn't understand about a man named Rudy. A photograph of a hotel lobby with a brass elevator door. Taken from a low chair, the way you photograph a place while waiting in it. And then, from 6 months ago, Nadia. "We agreed. Cleveland doesn't happen again." Elliot. "I know. Margot can never find out. Cleveland is 2 hours from our front door." I want you to understand why that is the sentence I could not get past. It was not a far-off city. It was not a conference in a place he would never see again. He could have gotten in the car at 11 at night and been standing in our kitchen by 1. 2 hours. He chose not to drive them. I did not cry. I want to be honest about that. Because I have wondered since whether it says something unkind about me. I took screenshots. Then I made a new folder on my phone and named it with that day's date, and I put them in it. I used to think people gather evidence only when they already know a marriage is over. That night, I learned it is also how you keep from being talked out of what you saw with your own eyes. He confessed at 11, and not because it was eating him alive. He confessed because I turned the screen around. "It was a kiss," he said. "She kissed me." You have spent 4 hours at a time with your hands inside a child's chest. Do not insult me by pretending you lost motor control in a hotel bar. He sat down. That frightened me more than the anger had. "Did you go up to her room?" "No." "Did she come to yours?" "No." Did you see her again on that trip? A pause. At breakfast. You had breakfast with her. We needed to talk. You needed to talk to the woman you'd kissed 12 hours earlier while your wife thought you were at a conference. I was at a conference. He heard it. He winced. That sounded terrible. It sounded accurate. And after Cleveland, you kept seeing her. Because of Milo. You kept deleting the messages because of Milo. You would have misunderstood. It is not your job, I said. To set the minimum amount of betrayal I'm allowed to be upset about. He put his hands over his face. Don't throw away 13 years over one mistake. 11. We had been married 11 years. I wasn't holding it as a weapon. It was just a fact sitting in the room. But that he got even that number wrong made everything colder than the confession had. I sent him home. Then I washed my face, and I went back in. She was awake, picking at the tape on the back of her hand. Mom, her voice was scratchy. Is Milo sicker than me? Why do you ask that, baby? Because he got to stay. I went home on the 4th day, while my mother sat with Wren. Tessa Nowak came because I did not trust myself to walk through 11 years alone. The house was exactly the same. That was the insulting part. Her sneakers were crooked by the bench. The grocery list was still under the Grand Canyon magnet. My blue cardigan hung on a kitchen chair because I'd worn it the morning she first said her stomach hurt. Our life had split down the middle and the furniture had not noticed. A lawyer named Rosalind Meyer had given me 2 rules that morning. Don't touch anything you don't have legal access to. Print everything you do. I started with the refrigerator. There is a paper calendar on the side of it. I have kept one every year since Wren was born. I used to put a small X on the days Elliot missed dinner. Not to keep score. To reassure myself it wasn't that many. I took last year's down and counted. 41. Her birthday. Thanksgiving, 3 hours late. The spring concert. The night she was admitted with pneumonia at 2, when he came in 7 hours after we did. I used to think I made those marks so I'd remember. I made them so I could convince myself 41 was still a small number. Then I sat down with the joint account. We kept 3 buckets, my separate Ashcombe assets, his salary and retirement, and the household account we both fed for the mortgage, camp, groceries, all of it. I hadn't looked at an individual transaction in 4 years. Trust makes bad accounting feel like romance. The payments went out on auto pay from the household sub-account. Our budgeting app filed the property management company under Home Services. Same folder as the lawn guy and the gutter cleaning. I only ever looked at category totals. Tessa said the truest thing anyone said to me that year. You weren't blind. You were looking exactly where it was filed. 14 months, $11,927. 6 months of rent on an apartment in Bloomfield at $1,650, specialist copays, an insurance premium in November. 4 transfers marked MISC, and a hotel charge from Cleveland, $11.87. The note he'd typed into the app himself, conf, lodging. His conference had reimbursed his room. I knew that, because I had seen the reimbursement clear. I went into his office for the prenup, because Rosalind had asked for it. It was in the fireproof safe, in the folder where I keep the tax returns and both our annual disclosure forms, because I am the one who files them. They were clipped together. Same year, side by side, mine, personal relationships that could affect a funding decision. I had written his name, his title, the hospital, the date, 4 lines in my handwriting, signed at the bottom. His, Ridgemont's annual compliance form, personal relationships with patients or patient families, blank, not wrong, not incomplete, not a misunderstanding of the question, blank. There are white spaces that say more than a full page of writing. He came home at 4. Why are you here? I almost laughed. I live here. You haven't been home in 4 days. Our daughter is in an ICU. I slid the statements across the desk. I've been busy. Apparently, so have you. He looked at the papers for a long time. The rent. She was losing the apartment. Her ex stopped paying support. 6 months. It was supposed to be 3. The co-pays. Milo needed an electrophysiology consult. Out of network. Denied. Every answer arrived intact. He had defended all of it before, silently, many times. I pushed the last page across. His face changed. What is that, Margot? You tell me. A room for whom? Silence. Was it the room? Yes. You paid for the room where you kissed her out of the account we use for her camp. I only kissed her. Don't correct the vocabulary while you're admitting the sentence. He stood up. It wasn't planned. You booked a room. She was crying. I looked at the wall behind him. Diplomas. A crayon drawing of him in scrubs with an enormous red heart on his chest. I had expected betrayal to feel like burning. It was cold and oddly clerical. I took my wedding ring out of my purse and set it on the dining table on my way through. Then I set the Cleveland receipt beside it, squared to the edge, the way you leave something for someone to find. I didn't say anything. I went upstairs to pack my daughter's things. Walter Vance called me himself on the 6th day. My father-in-law is 72. He spent 31 years inspecting safety systems at the Edgar Thompson Works in Braddock, and in 11 years he had never once inserted himself into our marriage. His voice shook. Margot, I don't know what's true anymore. That is why I went. Not for Corinne, for a man who had earned 1 honest hour. She set the table for 8. There were 4 of us. Habit, or hope, or because a woman who hosts sets a table the way she has always set it. But I counted 8 places and 4 people, and I understood something about that family. I had spent a decade not letting myself understand. There had always been more seats than there were people willing to sit in them honestly. My old place was between Elliot and his mother. I picked up my plate and moved it to the far side. Nobody said anything. Dinner lasted 11 minutes. $20 million. Margot. Corinne set down her fork. Whatever happened between you two, sick children shouldn't pay for it. I had expected this. I reached into my bag, 1 page, board minutes. I slid it to the center of the table and put my finger on line 4. Trustee M. Ashcombe recused from the vote due to conflict of interest. Result, 3-0. I didn't vote. Corinne, 3 people who don't share my last name and have never met my daughter voted. She did not say another word for the rest of the meal. Walter put down his fork. 31 years I inspected safety systems, he said. You know what I learned? Nobody bypasses a protocol because he's a bad man. He bypasses it because he's in a hurry and he's certain he knows better than the sheet. He looked at his son. Every man I ever pulled off a line told me the same thing. I've done it this way 100 times. The room went very still. Elliot, did her doctor say she could be moved? Elliot looked at his plate. No. Walter pushed his plate away from him and did not touch it again. Corinne reached across for my hand. I didn't give it to her. Please don't ruin his career over this. Over what exactly? She couldn't say it. Not with Walter sitting there. My daughter was 30 minutes away with a central line in her chest, and that was the sentence his mother had driven across town to say. I stood up, thanked Walter for dinner, and left. I got back to Northbridge at 8. Wren was sitting up, off the small pump for the first time in 5 days. dealing cards onto her tray table with the seriousness of a woman running a casino. She won twice. Then she stopped shuffling. "Mom, did Dad make us come here?" I put my cards down. "Why do you ask?" "I heard Grandma Corinne on the phone." Of course she did. 7-year-olds hear everything. "What did she say?" "That Dad was trying to help Milo." The monitor clicked over. Somewhere down the hall, a pump alarmed and a nurse's shoes went past. "Milo was very sick," I said. "I know. He needed a bed in the ICU." "I know that too." She lined her cards up square with the edge of the tray. "Dad gave him mine." There are lies parents tell because a child isn't ready. There are truths parents use as weapons. I did not want either one on the record. "Your dad made a decision about your bed that I disagreed with. Your doctor disagreed with it too." She thought about that. "Does Dad love him more than me?" My heart cracked so fast I could not get a breath behind it. I moved my chair closer. "No." "Then why?" Sometimes grown-ups try so hard to fix one problem that they stop seeing what they're risking. She frowned at me. "That's stupid." A laugh came out of me before I could stop it. "Yes, it is." "Would I have died?" "Nobody knows. That's why I moved you. So we'd know for certain you'd keep getting the care you needed." She leaned against my arm. "Okay." I kissed the top of her head, dealt her another hand, and she beat me again. After she fell asleep, I went into the bathroom and turned the water all the way on. I could survive Elliot. I could survive Nadia. I could survive the money. There is no sentence in the English language for what it does to you to hear your 7-year-old ask whether her father ranked her second. Ridgemont's compliance office asked to interview me on the 10th day. I went in through the main lobby, not the donor entrance. I had used that door for 6 years without once thinking about what it meant that there was one. Rosalind Meyer sat on my left, across from us, a compliance attorney named Brenda Ives, and on the screen behind her, an independent reviewer they had retained from outside the system. Brenda put a printout on the table and turned it toward me. 3 lines from the audit log, 3:42 p.m. Attending note, S. Okafor, remains vasopressor dependent, not a step-down candidate, 3:47 p.m. Patient chart accessed, physician credentials, user not assigned to care team. 3. Bed review request opened. 9 minutes, end to end. And in the middle of them, a 5-minute window I had not known existed. "He's her father," I heard myself say. "He's allowed to look at her chart," Rosalind answered before Brenda could. As her father, he had every right to it. He'd have gotten it in 20 minutes from Health Information Management, with a signature and a timestamp on the request. He didn't want it as her father. She let that sit. He took it as a physician, because a physician doesn't have to explain why he's looking. Brenda didn't confirm anything. She wrote something down. That was how I knew. Then the reviewer on the screen said, "Mrs. Ashcombe, I'd like you to look at one more document." Brenda slid it across. A regional transfer agreement between Ridgemont Medical Center and Northbridge Children's Hospital. Signed the previous March. 24-hour activation, 1 phone number, printed in bold at the top of page 1. So nobody would have to hunt for it at 3 in the morning. At the bottom, under co-signatories. In handwriting I have seen on 11 years of birthday cards, Elliot Vance, MD, Vice President, Clinical Operations. Hy had a door that would have saved both children. He signed it into existence himself. He did not open it. I sat there and understood why. And it was so simple it took the air out of me. On the other side of that door, nobody would have needed him. Nadia asked to meet me 2 days later. We did it in a conference room at Rosalind's office, with her lawyer present and mine, because I was not going to let anyone say later it had been anything other than what it was. She looked smaller without him next to her. "Milo's doing better," she said. "I'm glad. I meant it. He's 9. She turned her coffee cup around twice. "You want to ask me about Cleveland. I want the version you'd say under oath. We had drinks. We went up. We kissed. He stayed maybe 20 minutes, and then he panicked and he left." She looked straight at me. "We did not sleep together. You don't have to believe me." "Why did you keep seeing him?" "Because Milo trusted him." "And you?" She didn't dress it up. That is the part I did not expect. "Because I liked it when he came back." I let the room be quiet. Then she took out her phone. "There's one you don't have. I don't think anyone has it. It's above where the screenshots start." She turned it around. 3:39 p.m. Elliot. "Let me handle it. Don't tell anyone you asked." 3 minutes. 3 minutes before Simone Okafor sat down and wrote that my daughter could not be moved. He decided before there was any medical information to decide with. Everything after it. The vasopressor dose, the lactate, the sentence about who was sicker, the whole careful clinical picture he laid out for me behind a closed door. None of it was reasoning. It was a man assembling a case for a verdict he had already reached. Rosalind asked, very gently, whether Nadia had given that message to the reviewer. "Not yet." Her jaw tightened. "The hospital's lawyer has called me 3 times. I know what it sounds like when someone is deciding whose fault this is going to be." Her lawyer said something about assurances. Everyone had a lawyer now. The consequences had turned into paperwork. I sat in the parking garage afterward for about 15 minutes without starting the car. Then I opened my phone and scrolled back to February, Punxsutawney, 6 in the morning, 20 degrees, my daughter up on his shoulders with her hands in his hair, both of them laughing at something outside the frame. I did not delete it. I did not need him to be a monster. I needed to stop pretending what he did was survivable. Nadia gave the reviewer everything the next morning. I did not ask her to. 8 days after that, Elliot filed in family court. I did not ask for medical decision-making. I think even he understood how that would have read. What he asked for was a reduction in the supervision conditions on his parenting time, and one line in the record stating that my transfer of our daughter had been impulsive. Allegheny County Family Court is not television. Fluorescent lights, carpet the color of oatmeal, tired lawyers with expandable folders, and a judge who had certainly heard 20 versions of my spouse is impossible before lunch. Rosalind submitted 3 documents. Okafor's note, time-stamped 3:42, before the bed review existed. The Northbridge transport chart, vitals, medications, risk assessment, level of care maintained end to end, and Feld's admission note, continuation of intensive monitoring appropriate. The judge read for a while without saying anything. Then she looked over her glasses at Elliot's attorney. "Counsel, where is the evidence that the mother acted recklessly?" His lawyer shifted in his chair. "Dr. Vance believed the child would have been better served remaining at Ridgemont. In the bed her attending had documented she required?" Silence. "Because the answer required saying Milo, and saying Milo required saying Nadia." The judge took her glasses off. "Dr. Vance, this court does not doubt that you love your daughter. This court doubts your order of operations. And in a custody matter, order of operations is the only part of love that leaves a paper trail." The petition was denied. In the hallway afterward, his attorney said something to Rosalind that she repeated to me in the elevator. 4 words, flat and professional, and a little bit sad. I told him not to. He filed it because his mother told him a man who doesn't fight looks guilty. The other thing that came out of that filing was mandatory financial disclosure. Elliot listed everything: the rent, the copays, the hotel, voluntarily, so nobody could later accuse him of hiding assets. Rosalind said it was the first smart thing he'd done. On the 4th page, in a schedule of historical medical expenses, was a line item for $500. A laboratory in Monroeville. Paternity testing. The invoice was dated 12 years ago, 3 months before our wedding. I brought it to him on the courthouse steps because I could not wait, and because I already knew. You had it done before we got married. Yes. And it came back negative. A long pause. Yes. So for 12 years you have known Milo is not your son. Yes. I want to tell you something I am not proud of. For 3 weeks, I had been quietly hoping that boy was his. Not because it would have been better, because it would have been a reason. Biology is a reason. Biology. I could have explained to Wren someday, in a kitchen somewhere, in a way she could carry. He didn't have one. He knew. He knew when he stood in front of 140 people and said the words. He knew every time he came home late. He knew in that hallway. So you didn't choose her son, I said. You chose the feeling of being somebody's only option. He sat down on the courthouse bench like his legs had stopped agreeing with him. The audit closed 11 days later. I wasn't in the room. I wasn't entitled to be. And I have come to think that mattered. Yolanda forwarded the summary at 6:40 on a Thursday. I was at my mother's, chopping onions, Wren doing homework 6 feet away with her legs swinging. Findings: failure of governance, undisclosed conflict of interest, chart access outside clinical role, administrative intervention in a resource allocation decision involving his own child. Action: immediate termination of executive appointment. Clinical privileges retained. Referred separately to the State Medical Board regarding data access. Mandatory professional boundaries coursework. No handcuffs. No revoked license. A slow, procedural stripping away of assumed power. I read it twice, put the phone face down on the counter, and kept chopping. But there was one more line, at the bottom, in the section nobody reads. A second-year resident had requested reassignment off his service. Amara Boateng. She was one of the 2 residents standing in that hallway on the first night. She didn't file a complaint. She didn't testify. She never said a word about any of it. She just quietly asked never to be scheduled with him again. That was the sentence. Not the title, not the license. A 31-year-old doctor deciding she would rather not learn from him. Mediation took 9 hours. The marriage took 11 years. Pennsylvania gives you 90 days. The prenup protected what my father left me. His retirement was his. The house was marital, so we sold it. Neither of us wanted to raise her in a museum. The $11,927 went into the property division, not because I needed it, because I needed the record to stop pretending it was harmless. He stopped at the door. I want to ask you something. I knew the question. Don't. Why? Because it was never a question for me. Elliot, it was always a question for you. He stood there a long time. Then he closed the door, and I thought, maybe this time he will ask himself. He sent a letter, 4 pages. I put it in a drawer with last year's calendar, the one with 41 marks. 18 months later, I put both in the same paper bag and carried them to the curb. I never read past the envelope. Not everything a person needs to say has to become something you are obligated to carry. Nadia applied to the Family Assistance Fund. Denied in the first cycle on residency. She reapplied 4 months later, after she'd moved, and qualified. I know this from a quarterly summary. 2 pages, case numbers, no names. I had asked Yolanda to make certain I would never see the names. She did. That is everything I know, and exactly as much as I should. Elliot took a job at another children's hospital. Surgery only, no title. Wren asked him about it in the car. Are you the boss there? No. Sweetheart. Good. You were tired. I ran into Simone Okafor in a Squirrel Hill coffee shop a year later. He's still the best pair of hands I've ever watched, she said. I know. But when he suggests something now, people check. She shrugged into her coat. They didn't used to. That is what it costs a doctor, not the license. The half-second of automatic trust. Wren is 8. We were splitting a pizza on Murray Avenue when she said, mouthful, I don't ask Dad that question anymore. Which question? If he loves me the most, how come? She shrugged at me like I was slow. Because I know you do, that's enough. I had to look at the ceiling for a second. She had done in 18 months what took me 11 years. She stopped auditioning. The foundation put the $20 million into a regional pediatric critical care transport network across western Pennsylvania. Mobile ICUs. Stabilization bays at 4 rural hospitals. A lodging fund for parents who can't afford a room near their child. Wren named it. 446 bridges in this city, and she has counted them since she was 5. The Bridge Program. Our name is on nothing. That confuses other donors. It makes me happy. At the opening, she climbed into one of the new ambulances and sat beside the gurney. No clicking. New plastic and disinfectant. Mine was like this. Very similar. Does this mean another mom won't have to fight for a bed? That's the idea. Good. Buckling her seatbelt afterward, she looked up at me. Mom, did you save me? Every parent wants to say yes. The doctor saved her. The nurses saved her. The antibiotics and the transport team saved her. I did one thing, I said. I made sure nobody stopped the people who were trying to... Same thing. No, baby, I kissed her hair. Not the same thing. My mother asked her question again last spring. Would I have recused if the vote had been close? I told her the truth. I don't know. So I built the fund so nothing would depend on what I know about myself. I gave back $20 million. I gave back a marriage. I gave back my silence. For 11 years, I confused being strong with being endlessly available. Being loved is not a contract that makes you the person everyone is allowed to spend. I will never teach my daughter otherwise. Before you go, 3 questions I still can't answer. Should he have kept his license? The board let him. I have never been certain they were wrong. Second, that letter, 4 pages, 18 months in a drawer, never opened, would you have? And the one that keeps me up, he told our daughter he would never do it again. And I believe him. Do you? Tell me in the comments. And if you have ever been the one everybody counted on to understand, subscribe. I am telling these for you.